this is our focus on performance anxiety, public speaking anxiety, and how we can be afraid, anxious, all of those things, and still do the thing we have to do anyway. So this is going to be a very laid back day. There's going to be some interaction and some practice. So in those instances, it's probably best to have your camera and microphone on. But if you'd really prefer not to, and you don't really have any interest in showing your face or speaking and having others hear you, or if you're in a space where that's not really an option for you, totally fine. So whatever is your level of comfort, we will meet you there. Again, my name is Anne Grabowski, pronouns she, her, hers, and I'll be your host for today. We will be getting started pretty shortly here, probably in about 4 or 5 minutes. But in the meantime, if you would please, if you could locate the chat, most of you probably have that open to you. If for whatever reason you don't, please let me know. And in the chat, let me open it up over here. In the chat, go ahead and list your favorite media. So your favorite movie or TV show or book or podcast or magazine or something I didn't think of and didn't list. Just type it in the chat. We'll get to know each other a little bit and start off with something easy, something we know. Ooh, Better Things. I've heard a lot of good stuff about that. I'm going to go ahead and join in myself. Twilight Zone is my favorite TV show. Ooh, Me Before You, Sex Education, great. All of these are really great. And no, I'm not just making a little list on the side of recommendations, although why not? I'm also a fan of, what's it called? Can't think of my favorite podcast name. Oh yeah, now I remember. Violating Community Guidelines is my favorite podcast. All righty, let me see. Make sure we have everybody coming in. Wonderful. For everybody who just joined us, hello and welcome. You are in the right place. This is Performance Anxiety, Being Afraid and Doing It Anyway. I am your host, Anne Grabowski, pronouns she, her, hers. And while we're getting ready here today, do me a favor if you can, if you haven't done so already. In the chat, which will be that little speech bubble that you see pop up there, let me know your favorite movie or TV show or podcast or multiple things. I couldn't limit myself to one. I put my favorite TV show and my favorite podcast. Ooh, some of these I actually haven't even heard of. Ooh, Moth Radio Hour is fantastic. I see someone put that in there. Wonderful. So we are going to get started again in about 2 minutes. Thank you all so much for joining. Again, just to recap a little bit, if you would like to have your camera on, that's fantastic. There will be an interactive portion of our day where it might be beneficial to have your camera on. But if you would prefer not to, or if you are just not able to, perfectly fine. I'm definitely not going to kick you out for not having your camera on. And same goes for your microphone. If you would like to type messages or questions in the chat, that's perfectly fine. Or if you'd like to unmute yourself and say, hey, Anne, I have a question, I have a comment, I have a disagreement, those are cool too. And we will go ahead and address that. I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off very briefly just to address something and make sure we can get everybody in the room. And again, we'll get started in just a few minutes.
Oh. Avalon, favorite movie. Uh, um,
Okie dokie, just letting some people back into the room there. Trying to find my water. You'll see why I'm highlighting the fact that I'm trying to find my water in just a moment, or just a bit, I should say. And for those of you who didn't already hear this, or if you did, just a reminder, go ahead and in the chat, let me know your favorite book or your favorite movie, TV show, anything like that. Just a little bit of a getting to know each other. Ooh, I see somebody listed Misery by Stephen King. Anyone who knows me knows that I have a vast collection of Stephen King books. One of the first books I ever read was a Stephen King book. It was Carrie. The whole way through, I wasn't in second grade reading Carrie, just for anybody going, wait, what? But yeah, love Stephen King. Great podcast recommendations here. Okay, I'm still letting some folks into the room, but I am going to go ahead and get started here pretty shortly. If you get kicked out and you need back in, I'm going to try to keep an eye on that. So if you see me pausing and kind of staring up into space, I'm probably letting someone in to join us. We also in the background here have the incomparable Betsy Vanoy, who's going to be checking in on the chat to see if there are any questions and also helping me in a couple other ways. So thank you very much to Betsy. But both of us are here today to kind of guide you through this presentation, and honestly, more so to just have some fun. This is going to be a fun one, I think. So let me take a sip of my water to hydrate. Alrighty, we'll go ahead and get started. Clear that out. Woohoo! All right, thank you, everybody. Welcome again. For those of you who don't know me, I do see a lot of familiar faces in this group, which is fantastic. Hey, I can see some folks waving. It is fantastic to see people coming back. It's like a friend group getting together. I really like that. Oops. Might have just accidentally kicked somebody out of the waiting room as I did that. So if you're coming in and you're like, why did I just get kicked out? My fault. That's all me, you can blame me. So once again, for folks who don't know me, my name is Anne Grabowski and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And you may be wondering, okay, why is this woman talking to me about performance anxiety or public speaking? Because I've been doing it about as long as I've been regular speaking. When I was a young kid, I was into a lot of community theater, some very small local commercials and things like that. I love theater. I was a theater kid, and I still say that. I'm a former theater kid. I see we got some current theater kids out there. All right. And it's really what started me in this whole world of public speaking, persuasive speaking, and instructional design, informative instructional presentations and events. I've been doing this for about 25 years. So about 25 years ago was the first time little tiny Anne ever got on a stage in front of people and said some stuff. And I think it went pretty well. And since then, it's been going pretty well. It's been going not so well, and it's been going everywhere in between. I love telling stories of all the things that have happened to me, to my friends, to people that I work with while they're presenting to a group. And dealing with that anxiety and excitement. Another thing that I have experience in is, believe it or not, a couple years ago, I got hit out of the blue, if you will, with public speaking anxiety. And so you might be thinking, all right, well, how the heck does that happen? You've been doing this for 20 some odd years. By the time I started experiencing public speaking anxiety, I had already done audiences of about 3,000 people in person. And for some reason, my brain flipped a switch and said, okay, just so you know, every time you have to present now, even though it might be 10, 20 people, you're going to be terrified. Have a good time with that. And that wasn't fun. I didn't know what that was about. And that was very frustrating to me. And through that experience, I learned that this is something that a lot of people deal with, that performance anxiety or public speaking anxiety is not only for folks who don't speak in front of other folks very often. It is not only for folks who consider themselves to be shy or introverted, or don't want to be the star, don't want to be in the spotlight. It can really happen to anybody. If you are familiar with an actor named Stephen Fry, he's an English actor. He does a lot of voiceover work. He does a lot of movie work. He, a few years ago, made an announcement. I'm not sure if he's still in this space, but he made an announcement that said, hey, just so everybody knows, I'm done giving speeches and I'm done doing plays. And his fans and his people were like, well, why? You're this talented actor. You are the one that people watch to learn how to do this, to learn how to hone their craft. And he said, you know what? I don't know what this is about, but every time I get on stage, I feel like I'm going to pass out. And that's not fun for me. So I'm going to not do that anymore. So there's another example of somebody who, this is their life, and suddenly it's knocked off kilter by this anxiety or panic. So that's what we're going to focus on today. We're going to learn about what the difference is between anxiety and panic when it comes to presentations and public speaking. We're also going to learn how to address our own emotions when we get to that stage, when we get to the, I'm spiraling, I don't know what to do stage. So we're going to learn some exercises, some practices that you can use for yourself, or you can use for folks that you're working with. Maybe you have somebody on your team who has to give a big presentation and they're really not looking forward to it. There's stuff in here for everybody, and there are some new things I think we're going to learn today. In addition to being the theater kid, as I got older, I had a couple other jobs that, surprise, surprise, involved quite a bit of public speaking. I was an actor for Hershey's Foods for a number of years. So if you were in Hershey's chocolate world between, let's say, 2007, 2013, and heard anyone singing about candy or dancing with cartoons, that might have been me. That could have been me. So that was the job I had for a good amount of time. I was the outreach coordinator for the Office of Student Aid at Penn State University for about 9 years. So with that, I presented from groups ranging from one singular grad student to 3,000 people in the Eisenhower Auditorium on Penn State's campus. And currently, I am on the board of directors and I'm one of the senior facilitators for ASAOE, which is why we're all here today. So that's my experience with this, and my proof that even though I experienced this fear and this anxiety that we're going to talk about, I was still able to do these things. I was still able to be afraid and get the stuff done anyway. All right, so what are we going to cover as we're going through our event today? Again, it is a little bit loose and relaxed, and if you've heard me present, you've heard me say this before, please feel free to interrupt me. If you have a question, a comment, a concern, I like to be interrupted so that, we're all on the same page and that we can foster some good conversation. But the basics that we're going over today, we're going to cover breath support, how to make sure we have strong breath support, and how to teach that, hone that skill. We're going to learn about the differences in anxiety and panic, how both of those manifest, and how to tell if you're experiencing one or the other. I will go ahead and say, I've said this during some of my other presentations, specifically the addiction presentation, I am not a doctor. However, I am well-versed and well-trained in a lot of these exercises. So just want to make that clear that I am not giving you medical advice. I am giving you tools and exercises that you can use to help yourself. We're going to talk about how to best prepare your content. And by your, I mean you specifically, because what works for you might not work for the person sitting next to you in getting ready to get out there, to present, to speak. We're going to do a little bit of a group practice activity with everybody here, so that should be pretty fun. I'm looking forward to that. And then, of course, we'll wrap it up with some Q&A, some chat. And of course, if you want to ask me any of the questions about some of the interesting things I've seen on stage, that'll be a good time to do that. All right, so let's start with our breath support. Now, if you are able, I don't know if you can see me, but see I'm kind of moving my arms back and forth, kind of moving my shoulders, rolling my shoulders. If you're able to do that, if you're able to stretch yourself out and get that movement going, that's great. Now, some of you may be sitting, some of you may be standing, some of you may be leaning awkwardly. If you are able, try to get to either a sitting or a standing position, whatever is most comfortable for you, whichever is most conducive to helping you pay attention here. If you are standing, please try to put both feet on the floor about shoulder width apart. And if you're sitting, same thing, but try to keep your back straight, feet on the floor about the width of your shoulders, and just try to take a little bit of a breath. Are your shoulders going up? Are you going? Then you might not know how to breathe. Or you do, but you don't know how to breathe healthily. And I'm super guilty of that too. I know when I'm nervous, my shoulders are up here by my ears. So we want to maintain that body posture that we started with our feet on the floor. Try to keep those shoulders low. And I want you to imagine, and I know there are going to be some people here who have taken either theater classes or choir classes who are going to be having kind of a throwback to this moment. But imagine there's a string coming out of the top of your head. So there's a string coming out of the very tip top of your head, and it's attached to the ceiling. And you're just sitting there. The string is attaching you to the ceiling. And it's just giving you enough room, enough slack to sit so that you are relaxed, your shoulders are down, but you are elongated. So you can kind of take a nice deep breath. If this feels weird, that means you're doing it correctly. It should feel a little weird. It should feel a little awkward that you're holding your body in this way. But there is a right and a wrong way to get proper breath support. And breath support is the core of making sure you get through your presentation. You might be scared, you might be nervous, or maybe you were crying or you were forgetful because of your nerves. If you can maintain your breath support, if you can keep that system going, it's going to run all the other systems. So maybe your voice might be a little shaky, but you're not going to completely stop talking. You're not going to have your eyes roll back in your head with the proper breath support. So now that we have that position, that we're sitting here like little marionettes with the strings on our heads, first thing we're going to do is find our diaphragm. So make a fist with one hand if you are able. Again, if you're not able to do this, or if it's not a conducive space, you can go ahead and do this another time. Put that fist right above your belly button, or right above where the midsection of your stomach would be. And then put your other hand kind of out in front of it. And I know you can't really see what I'm doing, but put your hands about this, whoopsies, this far apart. What you're going to do is breathe so that you're pushing your fist into your hand like that. So take a deep breath. And you can feel that your stomach is popping out a little bit like that. That's your diaphragm. You're engaging your diaphragm, and that's what's running the show. That's the muscle that is telling you if you're taking a deep breath or a shallow breath. And a shallow breath might be one of those, okay, I didn't get a lot of air. I have a little bit of oxygen, but I don't feel like my chest can open or my stomach can expand. If you are engaging your diaphragm, you are likely taking deep, healthy breaths. So it's important to go ahead and do that. And again, that's what they teach you in voice workshops and singing exercises, is to have the fist kind of smack your hand. So when you're taking a deep breath, your hand makes contact, you know you've taken a nice, deep, relaxing breath. If you feel like you are about to pass out, just take a step back. So, maybe we're taking too deep of a breath and we need to let the oxygen go in and the carbon dioxide come out. But really, that's what we're trying to do, is make sure we're taking these big, full, meaningful breaths. So here's one of very many. If you go on Google and say, show me calming breath exercises, this is one of many that pop up. But this one is one that I've seen and used before, and that is pretty easy to go ahead and remember. So let's say we're before a presentation, we're getting ready to do all of these things, and we're shaking, our hands are going, we can't take a deep breath, and we're not sure what to do. How do we get our breathing back? How do we re-engage that diaphragm? So we get into that sitting position or standing position I mentioned earlier, where we are the relaxed marionette with our shoulders back. And we try to time our breathing. So maybe we take a breath in through our nose, and I'm just going to follow the steps that you see on the list here so you know what I'm doing. In through the nose, hold your breath for 1 to 2 seconds. Out through your mouth so that your belly flattens. Now, remember, we made that fist and we talked about punching that fist out into your hand. One other thing you can do is, when you're practicing exhaling, to make sure you are getting all of the air out and you are working those muscles to train them to take a nice deep breath. In addition to, punching your hand on the inhale, on the exhale, imagine that your fist is going to touch your spine. So it's going to go through you and it's going to lay flat against your spine. This should not actually happen. If you are actually able to touch your spine with your fist this way, please stop this presentation and go to a doctor. But the point is, you are envisioning the air going in and out, and your fist is not forcing that air. We're not doing the accordion, right? That fist is guiding you and kind of working as a visual for you to take that air in and out and in and out. So 1 or 2 seconds in through the nose, holding, out through the mouth. When we are breathing in through our nose, and if you're still thinking, I know how to breathe, what is she talking about? Just work with me here. So my chest is up, but my shoulders are not. And when I'm exhaling, shoulders still down, and I look like I'm blowing through a straw. So imagine, if you're not sure if you're exhaling correctly, try to envision that you're blowing through a straw to blow out some birthday candles. And that's the oomph you should have with this air leaving you, and the way your face and your muscles should be situated. Again, if this feels weird or you feel like you look weird, that's perfectly fine. If you've ever seen, again, back to the theater kid thing, if you've ever seen a group of folks doing theater warm-up exercises, there is no such thing as looking too weird to get ready for a presentation. And also, just as an aside, there is another presentation next week on improv exercises to improve your getting to know yous. So you might want to go ahead and check that out. Shameless plug for another event. But my point is, don't worry about looking silly, because when you learn that proper breath support, doesn't matter how you look, because you're in control. You've got this. So what's the difference between proper breath support and improper breath support? So with proper breath support, and I'm sure I'm scaring my cats right now, if I take a deep breath, I can talk for a long time. I can talk loudly. I can keep speaking without taking a breath. I haven't taken a breath for a long amount of time. I can keep doing this. My volume has not changed. I still haven't taken a breath, and I have a lot of air to go with, and so on and so forth. That is an example of, okay, I wasn't like, I got all my air, because I had that breath. That breath was locked in by my diaphragm. I could speak. I didn't have to worry about what my body was doing, because it naturally went into the flow of taking oxygen in and out. And also, when you force yourself to put your shoulders down, chest out, take a deep breath, I don't know if anybody's looking at themselves in the mirror, but I kind of look like, the cartoon characters when they win and they get the, you know, big chest and the hands out to the side. I look confident. I look like I know my stuff because I do. And I can show that in my body, in my breath support, and it makes you look like you've practiced more than you maybe have, or you have more confidence than maybe you actually do. You know, there's something to be said for fake it till you make it. I did mention that I had some experience with anxiety and panic that manifested in the last few years that I had to work through. One of the best pieces of advice I got is that if you don't give in to the feeling you're having, meaning if you don't go, oh, I'm spiraling, I'm gonna spiral on my face, I'm gonna go like this and grab my hair. If you say, okay, I'm spiraling internally, but until I keel over, I'm gonna look ahead and smile and speak confidently, you'll be surprised to find that your nerves dissipate and you look confident. You don't look like you're nervous, and so you don't have to worry so much. And next time, maybe you're watching a clip of the last presentation you gave, or you're going to give the second in a series, you have the experience of being up there with the proper breath support, not passing out, not forgetting, not stumbling on your words. And every time you do that, it makes the next presentation that much easier. So see how this whole breath support thing really snowballs. It really is the basis to regaining comfort and regaining composure. You may not be able to get back to a place of, oh, I'm totally relaxed, it's nothing. But you may not be at the level of, okay, I got to run, I got to get out of here, this is awful. Now, without proper breath support, let's say I take a shallow breath, I can talk for some amount of time, but I'm already running out of breath. You can hear that my breath is breathy. That was a great sentence. And I'm already out. I already have to take a breath because I took a shallow breath into this part of my lungs. My shoulders went up, my muscles got tight, my body did not take in the oxygen, it did not engage my diaphragm. So as I was speaking, in addition to the fact that you could probably hear that it was a little bit labored, my voice was starting to crack. I like to joke that I have a little bit of a performance voice, a phone voice. So if we're chit-chatting, I don't necessarily sound quite like I do now. But when I lose that breath support, I go into my normal, hey, let's chat voice, which is not always conducive to large audiences or to having folks understand what I'm saying. I'm a mumbler by nature. So if I'm not getting that breath support, if I'm not making sure that I am clear in my speech and in my air intake, you might have no idea what I'm saying. Also, if you don't have that breath support, that's kind of what makes you pass out. There are a few things that engage in the human body that lead to fainting spells. I am somebody who, especially when I really started experiencing anxiety and performance anxiety, my biggest frustration was the why. Why is my heart beating so fast? Why are my palms sweaty? Why am I engaged in this panic response? And what helped me was to learn what my body was doing. You're feeling this because your body sent this message to your brain. You're feeling this because there was no air in your lungs, so your system kicked out and tried to get some air. So that is another good way to learn how your systems are working. And if you're worried about fainting or becoming lightheaded, if you know that not taking those breaths, not getting that air is what leads you to that state, you can better prepare, you can better avoid it, and you can know, okay, that's not going to happen to me. I got this. I'm in control. And of course, without proper breath support, there's physical strain, which in addition to making you sound less confident and less together with your presentation, it can do long-term damage. So just an example, again, I'll go back to my musicals and my movies. If you've heard of Julie Andrews from Mary Poppins, from The Sound of Music, The Princess Bride, or Princess Diaries, not Princess Bride, Julie Andrews was famous for her singing voice. She had this beautiful, melodic, angelic voice. She developed through years of singing and through just some of her own health issues, nodes and growths on her vocal cord that, while she was trying to work through them, ended up doing more damage than when she started. And because of that, she's had to have work done on her voice box, on her vocal cords, and she's not able to sing or perform as she once did. So that's an extreme example, but just to let you know, these the straining, the stretching, the using the shoulders and the wrong breath support, it can come back to bite you in more than just making your presentation look a little shaky. It can hurt you physically. And let's talk a little bit about the difference between anxiety and panic, because that's one thing that kicks out the breath support right away. Is when you get nervous, your breathing gets a little weird. One thing I want to state before we discuss anxiety and panic: there will be no gatekeeping here today. And what I mean by that is, this is not, oh, you're only experiencing panic if blah, 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 or that's just anxiety, you can go ahead and deal with it. But no. We're understanding the differences between anxiety and panic to understand the actions we should take if we are experiencing those as a result of being on stage or needing to prepare to be on stage. So I'm not saying, okay, don't say panic when you mean anxiety, don't say anxiety when you mean panic. That's not what we're on about, but we just want to be sure that we understand the medical differences, if you will. Because again, when I'm experiencing these things, it helps me to understand medically what's happening inside my own body so that I can better react and better prepare for the next time. So let's talk about the differences between anxiety and panic. Anxiety is more of a general term. So it is a nervous feeling, a general sense of dread, typically directed towards something that's coming up. So when we say public speaking anxiety, that's somebody who knows, okay, I have a presentation on Friday in front of the board of directors. I hate speaking in front of people. I'm very nervous. I've got to practice this. I'm going to be thinking about this every time my mind wanders. That's anxiety. We're experiencing worry and maybe an inflated sense of worry about an impending occurrence or event. But we're not in a state where we cannot function. So we are still able to go through our day-to-day, do our work, do our normal life. But it's sitting there. It's that little voice in the back of your head going, hey, by the way, this is still happening. Panic is a little different. Panic is more of, let's say, kind of an end stage, if you will. Again, I am not a therapist, so I am not here to diagnose you with anxiety or panic disorders, anything like that. But having worked with some folks on my own, through my own experience, some therapists and some folks who kind of guided me through my own experience, you can really see how knowing these differences is going to help you. So panic, like I said, is end stage, meaning panic is something bad is happening. I can no longer control myself, my breathing, my words. So let's give an example on stage. An anxiety attack is, okay, I'm going up to speak, my knees are wobbly, my shoulders are wobbly. I take a deep breath, but I'm speaking. I might sound a little bit wobbly and I can't get a deep breath, but I'm not passing out. My message is coming across and I'm working through it. Panic is that I can't do much of anything, or I'm speaking in words that don't make sense. Panic is a get me out of here right now. And a panic attack tends to be an attack of emotion that you cannot work through. So if you're having that panic attack on stage, you don't get up with your shaky voice. You might not get up at all. You might forget where you are. You might have a full body reaction where you temporarily faint, lose consciousness. Again, these are extreme examples, but that's really what panic is doing if you're experiencing those things. Anxiety is okay. Anxiety is normal. When we say we're afraid, but we're doing it anyway, we're tackling with anxiety. You know, anxiety is, hello, darkness, my old friend. Panic is different. Panic needs to be addressed differently, possibly with medical intervention or with additional steps to reframe what's happening, because panic stops you from being able to do what you need to do. I'll go ahead and say, just to throw this in now, I have had a lot of wonderful experiences on stage and with audiences. I've also had a lot of awful experiences, some due to my own errors and some just cause. I gave a presentation once where I was full of anxiety, and I remember one of my colleagues said, "You look like Casper, Casper the Friendly Ghost. You don't have any color left in you." And I said, "Yeah, I know. I was very nervous for some reason, but I got through it. It was noticeable. I got through it." There was another time, it was during an event with Penn State admissions, where I had a full-blown panic attack on stage. I went to speak. I was standing near a podium and I pulled the microphone out in front of me thinking I'm fine. I didn't give it a second thought. Suddenly my vision goes like this. And the whole audience becomes about 3 people. And I can't hear anymore. So there's music playing while I'm supposed to be talking, and it goes to a and my brain's like, this is bad news. This is one of those full-blown panic attacks. What do we do? And what I did was leaned on the podium because I was losing the ability to walk, gave the presentation as quickly as I could, and got out of there and wasn't very happy about it. But I got through it. I didn't get fired. I don't think anybody really noticed. And I learned that, okay, even in the worst situation, even if I get up there and the worst happens, the panic happens where I can't engage, it's still going to be okay. I'm still going to get through it. So let's highlight some healthy anxiety. And I'll tell you why I chose this picture in just a moment. But one of my favorite quotes that I tell to people anytime they'll listen to me is what you see in front of you. This was said to me by Mr. Fred Bennett, who was a drama teacher and an English teacher in the Central Dauphin School District in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And I'm giving that shout out because I haven't seen or heard from him in years, but I keep quoting him, so I figure I might as well give the man a nod. He liked to tell his groups, I know you're nervous, I know you're scared, you're worried about something going wrong. Don't worry about it, because I promise you something will go wrong. It's gonna happen. Don't even worry about the if. Let's get over the if and the maybes now. Something is going to go horrifically wrong. Someone's going to forget their lines. They're going to forget a lighting cue. They're going to be in the bathroom talking to their girlfriend when they're supposed to be on stage talking to you. This stuff happens. So you prepare. You think, okay, well, what do I do if so-and-so doesn't show up? And then you can pop in and see, do I cover a line? Does this need to be addressed by somebody else? How do I prepare? And one of my stories here related to this instance, when I was in high school, I was in a play where I had a very intricate costume on, and I had a microphone that wrapped around my head. It was taped kind of against my forehead like this, so I couldn't take it off or on, nor could I reach the mic pack because of my outfit. And I was so worried about, what if I mess up? What if I can't move in this outfit? What if I can't do what I'm supposed to do? So at the end of one of the performances, I'm done. I don't have to be on stage anymore. I exit the top part of a set piece, and with my microphone still live, fall off the back of the set. So I take like a 5-foot fall onto a wooden stage with my microphone on. So everybody sees my character exit in this wonderful blaze of glory, and then here's, ah! And it was hilarious. I got a huge laugh, and I shouldn't have, because everybody heard me completely biff it off the back of the set piece. But that was an example where my drama teacher came to me and said, this is what I'm talking about. You were worried about something happening in your costume, and I told you it was gonna happen. And it did happen. And you know what? It was hilarious, A, and B, it didn't impact the show. People remembered the show, the drama, the fun we all had, the work we put into it. They didn't say, oh, well, that's all gone now because this person made a mistake. No, that's not quite how it works. So that helped me to learn, yeah, something's gonna go wrong, but so what? So what? Now, this little checklist, and I do want to make this a checklist. So if you want to take this, share this with folks, keep this with you. This is something you can have to learn about unhealthy anxiety. But I want to jump back to this picture really quick here, why this is the picture between healthy anxiety and unhealthy anxiety. That picture was me singing with a couple friends. We did an open mic night. And I was experiencing unhealthy anxiety leading up to that event. I was worried about things that I couldn't control. And during the event, I'm singing and we're working on our thing. And Nathan, who, let me actually go back to this picture. Nathan, who is the kid with the bongo drums on his lap, leans over to me and he goes, "I forgot some of my instruments." And I'm on stage. I'm sitting there in front of, there's not that many people, 20 some people, but I'm like, "You're telling me now that you don't have the instruments to play the song?" And he's like, "It's fine. Don't worry about it. I'm just letting you know it's fine." Okay. So we go to the next song and I look over and I'm hearing an instrument and I'm thinking, he said he didn't have one. The man was playing his keys. He took his keys out and was jingling them to the beat because he's like, "I forgot what I needed to do, but the show must go on. So something went wrong, but we figured out a way through it." And sometimes it ends up being very funny. But in that instance, and in other instances, when I was really deep into not understanding the anxiety I was experiencing a lot of these unhealthy anxiety symptoms. And unhealthy anxiety is something that maybe we want to talk to our doctor or therapist, if possible, a trusted friend or family member about, because this is something that, though it may not be an immediate issue, can impact you in the long run. For me, I was experiencing a lot of these things, but I didn't quite understand it. So I didn't understand that I really did need help to address the public speaking anxiety before I could recalibrate. So what are some instances of unhealthy anxiety? Losing sleep before a presentation or performance. Now, if you have trouble getting to sleep because you're anxious the night before a big presentation event, that's pretty normal and that's okay. We do want to try to get as much sleep as possible, right? Easier said than done. But what I mean by losing sleep is a week up to the event. Maybe we're experiencing some insomnia. We wake up in the middle of the night, we remember we have this event, we can't get back to sleep. And that's an unhealthy anxiety because that's not helping you prepare to present. That's not helping, train your diaphragm for breath support or recalibrate your thinking. That's just kind of taking away your energy. So we want to address that if we're losing sleep. If you're experiencing crying spells that are interrupting your daily life as a result of needing to do something or needing to present, that's not necessarily healthy. I will admit that I have gotten nervous enough before major events that I've cried in the last probably 4 years. I'm sure that's happened at least once. But it was one of those, okay, sniffle, wipe away the tear, let's get back into it. That's okay. If that's part of your process to get yourself in the right headspace, that's okay. But if you're crying a lot, if you're crying such that you need to step away from your work or from your family to address that, that's not a healthy emotional response. So that's something to address. If you're having difficulty eating, digesting, keeping foods down or keeping foods with you, without trying to be too graphic there, that's another sign of an unhealthy anxiety response or a potential pre-panic response. One of the first systems to go when your body is in fight or flight mode is your digestive system. Because your body wants to make sure that the important things are working the way they should. Your brain's working, your muscles are working, your organs, your heart, your lungs are working. So if you're really experiencing indigestion or inability to eat, that might be your body telling you that it's not okay. That being said, on days before major presentations, I usually can't eat very much. I had a very small breakfast before we started today because I wanted to have something in my stomach to get me going. But also I didn't want to eat so much that it might make me feel unwell. Even though I wasn't experiencing any anxiety today, I want to be cognizant of that just to make sure that I'm in tune with my body. If you're experiencing panic attacks, and again, difference between panic attack and anxiety attack, a panic attack is debilitating. You cannot move, you cannot drive, you lose your senses. Maybe you won't be able to hear for a moment, or your eyes or vision goes fuzzy. That's not a healthy response that we want to be experiencing. So that's something to talk to somebody about. Fainting spells, also something to be looked into. I almost fainted on stage one time. I don't want to say this was my own fault because I don't want to put undue blame on myself, because we all do that, right? But I once did a presentation after not eating a healthy breakfast, drinking a Red Bull, not preparing myself in the right way. And I got up on stage to talk and I was like, oh, I gotta sit down. You know what I mean? One of those, I'm sitting down whether or not I'm ready to. So that's not healthy. That's a sign of your body not being ready or your body being in a state of distress. So we don't want to be fainting. That's not entirely normal. If you're losing basic motor skills, so again, if you lose hearing or sight, if you feel that your fingertips are tingly, again, you might have engaged that fight, flight, or freeze response. Your body is directing blood away from the fingertips to other parts, so your hands are feeling tingly and panicky. But if you cannot move them, if maybe you're stuck in a fist or something like that, that's not good. We don't want that. Extreme irritability leading up to the event. I'm guilty of that, 100% guilty of that. If I'm very nervous before something, I might be like, don't talk to me. I gotta work on this. I can't refocus. Everybody's going to be a little irritable before a moment of stress, before a big presentation. That's normal. But extreme irritability would be lashing out, having anger responses that are not typical to your day-to-day stress level or your normal response. And again, that's something more that you'll be able to tell. What's normal for one person may be abnormal for the next person. And finally, and one that a lot of people I think forget, is an inability to relax once your event or public speaking moment has passed. You may have a surge of adrenaline after you get off stage. That's really normal. I personally, that always happens to me. I like to put on some music and sing really loud when that happens. That's the way I get the feelings out of my body. Other people dance, other people go out and ride bikes, but there are some unhealthy responses when you can't shut that adrenaline off. If you find yourself self-medicating or taking unhealthy action because you just need to relax, that'll snowball. And again, if you were in my addiction presentation, you know that. You don't want to self-medicate to make that feeling go away, because if it doesn't dissipate on its own, that's a sign that maybe something else needs to be addressed. So I'm going to go ahead and play a video that I hope works. It is a couple minutes long. One thing I want to mention as we're going through this video, second or third video in shows a dance injury, so it doesn't show the nitty-gritty of the guy hurting his knee. But if that is something that makes you uncomfortable or makes you a little squeamish, I don't blame you. Please feel free to tune out or mute this. And this video is about 8.5 to 9 minutes long. So yeah, just a warning that is in here. And the reason I'm showing you this video is this is people who public speak for a living, or who perform for a living, who address others for a living, who experience some kind of moment, and how it was addressed, how the medical community feels it should be addressed, and what to do if you find yourself in that situation. So again, these are super duper extremes. Is it normal to be like, I'm about to pass out, and then you do pass out? No, most people who say I'm gonna faint don't actually faint. But I'm showing you this to show you that it happens to, the best of them. And if it happens to you, it's okay. Nerves are okay. Mistakes are okay. Emergencies are okay. We'll get through it and we'll be able to public speak again. All right, so let me go ahead and start this video. And again, fair warning, it's about 8.5 minutes long if you don't care to tune in.
Live TV means you can't plan for what's about to happen. And sometimes there's some serious medical surprises. Let's watch it together. Beep whoop.
It looks like Ruben is in the lead, and here
Oh,
comes
wipeout. Oh! That could be a knee injury, an ankle injury, and a head injury, and a broken rib all in one.
Riverside Park, Rob Leth, Global News.
Great sign-off, though. The fall was so bad. It reminds me of Johnny Knoxville's thing with the bull.
It's time for our How You Ruin Halloween costume contest. We do it every year. It's always a lot of fun. Let's get started. Our first caress.
Oh. Oh!
The show cut to black and went to an extra long commercial break. But when it did come back on, Wendy was back up.
That was not a stunt. I'm overheated in my costume and I did pass out. But you know what? I'm a champ and I'm back.
Get evaluated. Overheating is a real issue. Dehydrating is a real issue. Heat stroke is a real issue. And it shouldn't be, oh, I just had a heat stroke, I fainted, I'm good to go now. That's not how it works. Okay, a little dancing, a little dancing. My dance moves are just as good as this. Yeah. What can go wrong medically here?
You okay?
I think someone got hurt.
Usually when patients describe a knee snapping, they mean the knee gave out. Most commonly, this can happen with a meniscus or an ACL, sometimes a PCL injury if there's some kind of like weird collision that happened.
I was catching her weight.
Oh, I see what happened. Okay, so there's potential for a meniscus injury there as well as an MCL injury. At that moment, if you have a tear of that ligament, you're just gonna get so much swelling and bruising. He's gonna get an x-ray to make sure that no bones are broken. He's gonna get some crutches. He's gonna get follow-up, get an MRI, find out that the medial meniscus and the MCL are torn, potentially either do rehab and or surgery, and we'll be back on his feet dancing his little heart away.
The problem is,
Oh! I did not expect a face first plummet like that. Call for help. First thing that we do, call for help before even investigating. And the microphone's still in her hand. The first thing you want to know is making sure that the person is conscious. Are they breathing? Do they have a pulse? Remember, if there's no pulse, you call 911 and you start those chest compressions, chest compressions, chest compressions. But it looks like she's kind of with it. So my prediction here and suspicion is that she had something known as a vasovagal syncopal episode, where because of nerves, because of extreme tension, her blood vessels dilated, her heart rate dropped, and as a result, she wasn't bringing enough circulation to her brain and she collapsed. This is very dangerous, not because of the actual situation that's happening with the low blood pressure, but the fall. The fall's the dangerous part. Like, she fell face first. As an EMT, you're really in a bad spot because you have no idea what just happened. The person isn't talking. You're trying to get information. You don't know, does this person have underlying medical conditions? So for their role, the most important thing is stabilizing the patient, getting them to an area where they can receive adequate care. She was treated for dehydration, released from the hospital. She returned for the showstopper round. Okay, so dehydration can precipitate a vasovagal episode, but it can also cause a fainting episode all on its own. Because what happens is if you're dehydrated, meaning you haven't consumed enough beverages, you don't have water content, you actually lose a little bit of blood volume. And when that happens, you can't generate enough pressure to bring the oxygenated blood to where it needs to go, like the brain and the vital organs, especially when you're standing. And as a result, with this blood pressure drop, you actually just faint. As a life-saving mechanism, your brain wants you to go flat, because when you're flat, the lower blood pressure can still circulate the oxygenated blood throughout your body. Correcting dehydration in a severely dehydrated individual is also very important and needs to be done carefully, because if you rehydrate too quickly with the incorrect type of fluids, you can actually cause swelling in the brain and cause the patient to die that way. So there's a lot of things that need to be taken into account here. Ooh, she looks stressed.
She okay?
Were you okay?
Go get her, go get her.
What happened?
Is she gonna throw up?
It's okay.
Again, very difficult to figure out what's going on. I like this position. It makes it easier for the blood to return back to the heart and go up to the brain.
Michaela has a condition that's pretty rare.
In 7th grade, I was diagnosed with vasovagal syncope.
That is not a rare condition. Now, maybe in individuals who it happens to quite often is a rare condition. There's two mechanisms at play during this type of syncope. One is increased parasympathetic nerve output, meaning that we're increasing that rest, digest mechanism, nervous system in your body that opens up blood vessels, which is good when you're lying down and relaxed, not good when you're trying to perform physically on stage, because it drops your blood pressure, therefore not bringing oxygenated blood to the brain. And then at the same time, it shuts down sympathetic nerve firing. So think about this. The blood vessels in your legs expand, so blood pressure drops. Now, if your heart was allowed to sympathetically respond, it would increase its cardiac output by beating faster. As a result, you would be okay. You wouldn't even feel that something's going on. But because you're shutting down the sympathetic and overdriving the parasympathetic, you're creating a really bad disimbalance that causes someone to faint and potentially really hurt themselves.
Well, a very, very heavy debatation tonight. We had a very Darrison. But let's go to Terrace look for the head of the pit.
Do we know what happened here? Look like potential stroke.
She claims it was a migraine.
There are types of migraines that could present with neurologic symptoms known as complex migraines. I would want a full workup to see if there was in fact a stroke. Now, in young, otherwise healthy people, sometimes the cause of a stroke can happen as a result of a PFO that generally people don't know about that they have. But as a result, if you ever have a blood clot in your leg and it starts traveling to your heart, it can transfer, instead of going into your lungs, into the left side of your heart through that hole, and then as a result get shot up to the brain, leading to a stroke.
This is me 10 years ago.
Dan Harris. I've read this book where he talks about this very moment.
Researchers report people who take cholesterol-lowering drugs called statins for at least 5 years may also lower their risk for cancer. But it's too early to prescribe statins slowly for cancer production.
At this point, I realize I'm helpless, so I bail right in the middle.
That does
Back
it.
to you.
We're going to go back now to Robin and Charlie. I knew with rock-solid certainty that I had just had a panic attack on national television.
Panic attacks are a real phenomenon, and people think that they're all in their heads. Panic attacks may start in the mind, but they continue out to the rest of your body, which means that you feel like your heart is racing a million miles an hour. You can't take a deep breath. There's an impending feeling of doom. You feel weak, you feel numbness, tingling. That's why so many people will describe it as a near heart attack episode, and sometimes we do want to rule out a heart attack.
I spent years in war zones where I covered the heroics of our men and women overseas and got a real taste of both the horror and the adrenaline of combat. After years of always barreling forward, when I finally slowed down, it was as if my mind revolted and I got depressed. And so, in my free time, I briefly but stupidly began self-medicating. And it was those recreational drugs, my doctor would later tell me, that almost certainly produced the on-air panic attack.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily those drugs that caused it. They could have indirectly caused it by increasing the feelings of anxiety, because a lot of people will take feel-good drugs when they're depressed, and as a result, those feel-good drugs will mess with your neurotransmitters, leading to higher highs but also lower lows, and as a result, withdrawal symptoms that can make it feel like you're having a panic attack or make it feel much worse, so much so that it could disrupt you in your place of work. I do recommend you read Dan Harris's 10% Happier. Check it out on Audible, my partner. Stuff went wrong during my own live event.
Alrighty. So yeah, I one of my favorite parts of this presentation so far was watching the people who have their cameras on during the knee dancing part of that video. Just a group of folks going, "Oh, yeah, not fun." But as you can see, folks who dance, perform, speak, address millions of people every night for a living still experience anything from butterflies to panic attacks to full-blown medical emergencies that have nothing to do with nerves. And so, you know, the point here is it can happen to all of us, but Mike here, Dr. Mike, makes some fantastic points that we want to focus on. You know, we want to hydrate, we want to be sure our bodies are properly prepped and positioned, and we can kind of counteract some of those things that we saw these folks experience.
Live TV.
No. There we go. Dr. Mike's like, wait, I got more to tell you. So let's say we're on stage, we've worked on our breath support, we've practiced our presentation, we know our information, you know, maybe it's a topic that you could talk about in your sleep if you really needed to, but you can't relax. You can't take that deep breath. We can't retake control, regain control of ourselves and our bodies. So what do? Well, there are a few things that we can do before we hit the, yep, this is panic, I can't do anything moment. Now, I do want to say, if you can't move, if you've got systems shutting off, full-blown panic attack, that's okay to go ahead and tap out. You don't need to go through all of these steps before you are allowed to panic. That's not what this is at all. But these are things that can kind of grab the reins away from the horse that's running wild and get it back to where it needs to go. So the first thing I would recommend, and I understand that this is something that not everyone is able to do. I highly recommend that if you are concerned with the level of performance anxiety you are experiencing, or if you're concerned, maybe this is beyond anxiety, this is a full-blown panic issue, speaking to a medical professional is the best thing you can do. I dealt with my anxiety and my panic for probably about a year and a half before taking it to a doctor, taking it to my doctor and my therapist, because I thought this was something that I just needed to work on. I just needed to recalibrate. I was being mean to myself because I'm like, come on, Anne, what the heck? I was using stronger words with myself, but what the heck? You've been doing this for years. You've been doing this since before you could drive. What are you afraid of? But the truth of the matter is there was no talking me out of it, because that's not what was going on. It was not a matter of, oh, I just need to think correctly and I will get through this. There were things I needed to address, and there were practices I needed to learn so that when I am spiraling, or if I do feel like I'm spiraling, I can regain control. So what are those practices? First and foremost, Dr. Mike said it. I said it at the beginning. This is why I'm highlighting my drink. And if you've ever seen me present, I always have sparkling water with me all the time. Seriously, there is nothing in this world like sparkling water for me. I love my sparkling water, but I always have it close to me so that when I have a break, if someone asks me a question, you'll probably see me go like this. Snag a sip of water, even if I'm not thirsty, because then my body is hydrated. As Dr. Mike said, my blood is able to flow, my systems are able to go as needed. But also when you hydrate, you don't get that kind of clicking mouth noise. You may or may not know what I'm talking about, but sometimes if your mouth is dry and your tongue is kind of sticking to the roof of your mouth, you can produce a clicking or a ticking noise while you're speaking. And this can be hugely distracting to some folks, especially if you're speaking on the radio or like this over Zoom or something where there is a computer or a microphone that your voice is being filtered through. It's kind of like if you've ever listened to NPR, they all sound like they're right on top of the microphone and you can hear every little bit of their voice. One of the things that NPR does is tell people to hydrate because otherwise it's going to get picked up on the microphone. If you don't like water, you don't like sparkling water is not always the best option because anything that's carbonated that can produce gas, you don't want to be halfway through a presentation and be like, okay, I'm just going to have like the loudest burp of all time. Usually not a good look, but if you're not a fan of water, that doesn't do it for you, or you really hate drinking water, sports drinks can be a good option. Electrolyte beverages, and by that I mean things like Pedialyte, herbal teas, so anything that's caffeine free, any kind of liquid that makes you comfortable to take a little sip of to make sure that you're keeping your body hydrated is a good option. I never present without having a beverage in arm's reach. So just keep that in mind. I mentioned earlier when I got on stage and I got a little lightheaded and felt like, oh, I'm going to sit down. I didn't have a water bottle with me that day. That was a good few years ago. And since then, I don't think I've showed up to an event without a water bottle, a glass of water, a can of seltzer, something. So hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. If you think you don't need to hydrate, you probably need to hydrate. You also want to be sure that your knees are not locked. Unlock those knees. If you've ever seen a video of maybe a choir concert, so a bunch of people singing up on some risers, and then suddenly somebody just drops, they likely locked their knees. That doesn't mean they're a bad person, doesn't mean they don't know what they're doing. I have seen absolute professionals get lightheaded because they weren't aware of how they were standing and they locked their knees. What do I mean by lock your knees? If you were to stand up, and you can do this if you are able to at this moment, but you don't need to, and you kind of straighten your legs as much as you're able to while standing. This is your knees being locked. Your knee is locked into place. It's not bendy and bouncy, if you will. And though that might make you feel somewhat incorrectly that you have a firmer stance. So you are standing firmly, you're not going anywhere. That stance is working against you. Locking your knees really creates an imbalance in blood flow and can lead to, as Dr. Mike was talking about, a vasovagal response. And what is a vasovagal response? Basically, it's fainting, it's passing out, it's dipping out a little bit and then coming back. So really just being aware of what your knees are doing can save you so much concern, because it's making sure that your blood flow is moving. If you're like, how do I stand without locking my knees? This is really weird. First, you're telling me I'm breathing wrong. Now you're telling me I'm standing wrong. What folks are told to do if you take, let's say, a public speaking course or a theater course is to stand like I had you stand earlier. So your feet are shoulder width apart, and bend your knees ever so slightly such that most of your weight is on your heel, with a little bit of weight on the pad of your foot. So you're kind of standing like that. See that you're holding yourself up, your knees are bent, right? You can feel that there's a bounciness. Now try on your foot to shift your weight a little bit forward so that your feet are not, one foot is not taking more weight than the other, and your weight's not all on your toes, your weight's not all on your heels. It might take a little bit of practice to find that comfortable position, but that kind of bouncy stance is really going to help you with your blood flow, with your breath support, and just overall with feeling better. You're not going to have that boom, 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 boom heart feeling as much. And hopefully you won't have that, ooh, I'm feeling woozy feeling. But maybe you will, right? Maybe we put all these plans in place and you still feel anxious and nervous and panicky. Now what? Our knees are bent, we're super hydrated, and we still feel a little weird. What do we do? There are a couple activities that you can do, and these are activities that I do, that I learned through seeking treatment for performance anxiety issues, and also from going to and teaching improv courses, theater courses, and things like that. So the first thing is a grounding activity that you can do. Some of you who may have had some experience with therapy or with counseling may have been introduced to this activity before. The idea here is that you're bringing yourself into the moment. So being like, I'm okay, things are okay, everything's cool, while also a little bit distracting yourself, tricking yourself. So let's say I'm panicked. I know I gotta present. I don't know how to calm myself down. I'm gonna focus on my breathing, and I'm gonna do this grounding activity. So around me, what are 5 things that I can see? And you don't have to say this to anybody except yourself. You can write it down in some notes if that's helpful for you. So 5 things I can see. I can see my cat's paw under the door. I can see my laptop. I can see my can of seltzer. I think that was 3. See, already I'm distracted. I can see my ring light, and I can see a tree outside. What are 4 things I can touch? I can touch my necklace. I can touch my hair. I can touch the textured top of my laptop desk. I can touch my keys. I'm going to not touch those so we don't lose anybody here. 3 things I can hear. I can hear the whir of my laptop fan that is trying so hard. Go little fan, go. I can hear my own voice because I am in a room with no carpet and not a lot of fabric. So my voice is bouncing all around, and I can hear my cats scraping at the door because they're not allowed in here while I'm presenting. 2 things I can smell. I can smell coffee from this morning, can slightly smell my laptop overheating. My laptop will be fine, guys, don't worry about it. And 1 thing I can taste. Okay, I can have a sip of my water. I can taste my water. Wonderful. And I always have to remind folks, for the taste one, doesn't necessarily mean you have to go taste this thing. So if one of the tastes you can see is a food item on your neighbor's plate, don't steal their food. Don't go, oh, mine, doing a grounding exercise. No, that's not quite how that works. But we want to get our minds thinking about something other than, oh no, I have to do this thing. And it is an activity that you can play with. You can adjust the number of things you want to do, but it helps to know, okay, I have to go through 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I have to label these things. I have to focus my thought on this such that my body will not have time to address the panic, the anxiety, the feelings I was feeling before. Another thing you can do while grounding, and this is something that if you've ever presented with me in person, I promise you've seen me do. Sometimes folks do hand motions or kind of a rhythmic drumming or something that makes them feel better. The one that I do is I have my palms, I will put them on the top of my lap, kind of near my knee, and just kind of move them back and forth. Does it look silly? Oh yeah, oh absolutely. But it, for some reason, is calming to me, and it helps me get back into the space of, okay, I'm sitting here in this room, I'm here as a person feeling nervous but not feeling like I can't do this. Everything's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. This is not a fight or flight situation. I think it's totally fine to look a little silly to prep yourself for your events. Again, if you've ever hung out with a theater person, you know that they do some silly things to get ready for their own events, their own performances. So if it works for you, that is fantastic. Another activity you can do with this rhythmic beating or with this kind of moving your hands along yourself is a rhythmic drumming exercise. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of rhythmic drumming exercises that you can find on YouTube. There are really involved ones where you have to snap and drum and blink and do all this stuff. There are some very basic ones, but again, the thought process is similar to our last grounding activity. We are focusing on maintaining another task, on doing something else so that our brain can recalibrate. And also with rhythmic drumming, this engages your body to move. And if we break down fight, flight, or freeze, there's movement in that, right? Fight is moving, flight, running away, freeze, not a lot of movement, but when you have that fight, flight, or freeze reaction engaged, your body wants to move. So when you're nervous, when you're anxious about giving a presentation, your body wants to move. If you feel like you can't sit still, you got to tap your foot. There's a reason for that. Your body is engaging with that message and that response. So a rhythmic drumming exercise that I will teach you, but again, you can do these all on your own. You can find many of these on Google, is the counting up and down exercise. If you have ever been in a choir or done voice lessons, this might be somewhat familiar to you. This is similar to a vocal warm-up, but it's going to be a little bit different for us today. So what you're going to do is, again, please don't hurt yourself. I don't want anyone leaving bruises on anybody. Absolutely not. But put your hand over your sternum, and your sternum is that hard, bony bit kind of right in the front of your chest. That's your sternum. Drumming on your sternum can help to relax you. Think of it like when we were tiny little babies. Everybody, think of being a tiny little baby. You see a baby's parent kind of bouncing them up and down. That's what you're doing to yourself. You're just kind of giving yourself some nice rhythm, nice relaxing, not fast. We don't want to go do, 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 do. No, just 1, 2, 3, 4. Try to keep this rhythm going. And then what you're going to try to do while keeping this rhythm, you can do it by doing something light, a light up and down touch, a tapping, a drumming. You're going to count up and down, and it goes like this: 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then we go back down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3. I always mess this up. 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 3, or I did it. 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1. Now, why did I pick this example? Because I knew I was going to mess it up. That's really why I chose it. And why I wanted that to be the focus is because it requires a lot of paying attention, focusing to not mess up your numbers. Some people mess them up on the count up, some mess them up on the count down, which is what I do. But I have to focus, I have to think, and I have to maintain a rhythm. So that is something that honestly, this rhythmic drumming exercise has pulled me back from the brink a couple times when I thought, oh man, am I going to be able to get up on stage? This rhythmic drumming one helps. There's also a way to do it where you engage your voice. So again, if you are someone who has had any vocal exercise practice, or if you were ever in a choir in school or in your place of worship, you may have done this, but it's kind of going up and down the scale. So it's 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, up and down and so and forth and whatever. You can make it into a song, you can make it into a game, you can do all sorts of interesting drumming and snapping, but just remember the 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. Try to keep it even. You may not be able to, I couldn't, right? But it's going to be something that you can repeat, you can focus, you can teach to other people so that, maybe you're doing okay, but you see your colleague is really not doing okay before your joint presentation. You can go up to them and show them this technique, this drumming. Really does help, really does help. So let's kind of go beyond the anxiety of the moment of, I'm on stage, there's this audience here, what do? I don't know how to deal with this feeling. And let's go a little bit back in time. Let's go to, you have just been given an assignment or a topic, or you've been given a role if you're somebody who does theater. And now what do I do to get myself ready so that when it comes to the performance time, I'm either ready to deal with my anxiety or I'm better able to take care of it in advance so that I don't feel that same level of anxiety. So what are our steps to prepare? This is just a basic example. Anyone who has any familiarity with instructional design will know this model. This is the ADDIE model of instructional design, but I'm just using it as an example of a process that is commonly used. So how do I build my presentation, build my event, build myself so that I am ready to talk? So let's say you're learning a role. So you're not giving a presentation that you have to create, but you are playing Romeo and Juliet. You will develop your character. You will, the design aspect would be how you're holding your body, how you're moving. The implementation may be setting dates that you have to be off book, or off book meaning fully memorized your lines. There's all these ways to do it. So again, this is not necessarily the process I want you to use, but it is a process that a lot of folks use. This is the process that I use, me personally. When I am given a task, an event, a presentation, the first thing I do is create. I get everything out of my brain into either a Word file, an online document, a folder somewhere, a notebook, just so I kind of get all of the basics out. I know everything I could possibly want to say. And then I take that and I put it into a form. So that might be a presentation file. Pardon me, if I need to build a PowerPoint, or it may be writing a script. I used to write a lot of the video scripts for the Office of Student Aid with Penn State. So typically I would write a very long giant script and then start cutting it back to polish it up. So I didn't have to worry about saying the right thing the first time. I knew that I could go back and review. So my process in step one is to get it all out there. And then my second step is the editing step, editing both my content and also myself. So this would be deleting things that I didn't need, adding things that I should have included, and going back and so on and so forth. Sometimes this step involves other people. I might say, hey, Betsy, can you review this document for me? Hey, Melissa, would you mind checking to be sure that I did all of the tasks I was supposed to do, anything like that. So this step is my polishing it up step. I believe this is a Coco Chanel quote, but I could very well be wrong. And again, no, not quoting her specifically for any reason, but she has famously said that when you're getting yourself ready to go out, in order to look the best you can possibly look, to look the most put together and the most stylish, right before you go out the door, take one thing off. So you've got all your jewelry, all of your wonderful clothes, maybe you've got some cool looking cufflinks, take one thing off and leave it. And that is the final step of polishing. And that's what I do. I go through my presentation and I take one thing out that doesn't need to be there, that is fluff, that is something that could trip me up. I've done it before where I know, okay, this slide, I can't get through that without stumbling on my words. We're just not going to say that. We're going to move on to the next thing. And then finally, my final step for myself is to practice, practice, practice. We want to rehearse everything, and also we want to time it to be sure that we're fitting into the time frame that I've been given. I tend to under-rehearse, but just because I've been doing this for a while. I would recommend at first, if you're new to public speaking, or if you're concerned about making an error or being experiencing anxiety, rehearse until you just can't rehearse anymore. Some people like to memorize things by rote, and by rote means I will speak it exactly as it's written on the paper. I don't find that helpful because then I'm more worried about getting all my quote unquote lines correct. But if that is something that helps you, so you know what you're going to say, you don't even have to think about it, perfect, great. That will be a part of your rehearsal step and something to learn about yourself. And when I go through my process on the day, so let's say this morning, right, or last night into this morning while I'm speaking with you. Last night, I ran my presentation to be sure that everything I thought I was supposed to say, I am saying, and also looking for any little errors, any little odds and ends. And then I made sure that I went to bed. I wanted to stay up and watch things. I wanted to stay up and work on another project, but I wanted to make sure that I got some sleep because, as we said earlier, sleeping helps support our breath system, our blood flow, all of that. So the more sleep you can get, the better of a foundation you're building from. The morning of a presentation, I have a light breakfast just so I'm not going to get woozy, but I'm also not going to start feeling ill. I'm not going to halfway through my presentation be like, oh, I shouldn't have had that huge cheese breakfast burrito thing. Something light, something easy, and something with water so that I am in advance hydrating myself. I also do a lot of vocal warm-ups and improv exercises. Second plug to sign up for my event next week where I teach you a bunch of improv exercises. But it gets me ready. It gets my body moving. It tends to get me laughing because sometimes these improv exercises are silly, and that makes it easier for me to present. And then finally, during the actual presentation, I always have water near me. And I try to move, but not fidget. And what does that mean? Fidgeting would be, I twirl my hair so badly. If you're ever in a meeting with me, you're going to see me do this. I'm trying to stop. I twirl my hair all the time. That's fidgeting. But me moving and me talking to you with my hands, I'm a hand talker. That's not necessarily fidgeting. That's moving and engaging my audience. So I know that I want to move, and if I stand at a podium, I'm going to fidget and twirl and do all that. So I'm going to work the room. I'm going to make sure I'm over there talking, I'm over here talking, I'm moving so that it's a smooth movement. I don't look fidgety, but I also don't have all this pent up urge to get the feeling out. All right, and now we are here for our group practice activity. So anybody who would like to participate in this, I highly encourage it. We're actually going to practice some speaking in front of each other right now with some of these tactics that we've learned so far. There is no judgment here, zero judgment, because I'm pretty sure most folks didn't know coming in, that we'd be doing a little bit of public speaking here. But I want to force you to do this because the name of this presentation is Being Afraid and Doing It Anyway, right? So here is your opportunity. Be afraid and do it anyway. That said, what we're going to do is, remember in the beginning I said, hey, everybody, put your favorite TV show, podcast, what have you in the chat. That's your topic. Congratulations, you have picked your own topic, and that will be what you are presenting on. We won't be able to get through everybody today, so it's going to be kind of a volunteer basis. But before we get going, I do want to say that if there is anyone in the room who absolutely does not want to do this, this sounds like hell on earth, Absolutely not. No way, no how. If you want to be sure that I do not call on you, send me a message in chat directly to me. I'm Ann Grabowski. Hey there. And I'll be sure to not call on you. So again, I want people to kind of lean into their discomfort with this. But also, if you really, truly don't want to participate in this, that's okay. All right, so again, our topic is dun, 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 your favorite movie, TV show, all that good stuff. And I am going to go first. Give me 2 seconds. I lost my stopwatch. Super fun behind the scenes action here. And I do see I have a few people who have asked not to participate. Totally cool. Totally fine. Sorry. Come on, chat. Let me see. Okie dokie. All right, so let me go ahead and go first, just to show you what we're doing. So again, you can't see this. I have my feet placed on the floor. My shoulders are down. I'm sitting like a marionette with a string coming out of my head and going on to the ceiling. I have a timer, and here I go. So my favorite television show is The Twilight Zone, but I know I've talked about that before in these presentations. So let me tell you about my favorite podcast. My favorite podcast is called Violating Community Guidelines. I highly recommend it. They also film their sessions and posted on YouTube. Violating Community Guidelines is a podcast with Sarah Schauer and Brittany Broski, both of whom are social media comedians and influencers. They are hilarious, and they talk on a lot of topics that I think are pretty useful to know for students who are younger. And if you can hear that noise, yes, I know I went with my 30 seconds. So that was my impromptu speech. Sounded a little weird, didn't know what I was doing, but I made it through. All right. Hey, Betsy, would you like to go ahead and give a 30-second presentation?
Sure thing, I can do that.
Okay, I will tell you when to start. Hold on, let me make sure you have a proper stage to go ahead and present on. There you go. Ready,
Yes.
set, go.
Okay, so my favorite thing is this podcast called Pivot with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. And I started listening to it because it's supposed to keep you updated on technology and business, the big four, like Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft, I think so. Anyway, but I grew to love it because of the banter between Scott and Kara, and they actually handle all kinds of just issues like LGBTQ identities and just political equality.
All right. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off because I'm like,
No,
okay,
it's
I
great.
want people to hear about this podcast. But yeah, see, there we go. Awesome. And Betsy, I know from working with you that you are a very skilled presenter, but I'm going to ask you, was that a little bit nerve-wracking?
Well, it was, but what I have learned is that people get what you're being in the room. So if you're being friendly and congenial, then they'll get that. If you're being nervous and twitchy and scared, they're going to feel nervous and twitchy and scared. So I try to be friendly when I present.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. So would anyone like to volunteer to do? We could probably fit a couple of these. All right, Maurice, I can see. Yep, Maurice Pittman, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute yourself. Give me just a moment to reset our timer, and thank you for volunteering. Are you ready to go?
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
All right, ready and go.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Maurice Pittman. I like two podcasts, Office Ladies from The Office, and Let's Talk Trio, a trio podcast. And thanks to Bernadine Bookie out there who got me hooked on it.
Awesome. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Maurice. Anybody else want to jump in? I think we could do one more person. Okay, Kim, I see you have your hand raised. You want to go ahead and unmute yourself? Are we all still here? All right. Kim, I see you have your hand up. Would you like to go ahead?
She says you have to allow her to have the floor.
Okay. I'm hitting the ask to unmute. Let's see if I can. Are you not able to hit the microphone? You might not allow you to engage the camera. All right, we might not be able to open that one. I apologize for that. Thank you for volunteering, though. I do greatly appreciate. And if we're able to unmute you at any point, we'll go ahead and do that. Checking on my time here. We have time for one more. Anybody else want to take a stab at it? Let's see. Let me go through the people who said, don't call on me. I want to be very sure that I'm being respectful of that. Okay. All right. And if I accidentally call on you and you asked me not to, go ahead and tell me, no, that's not right. All right. Let me try this again. Kim, why don't you go ahead and try to unmute yourself once more? I see that you exited and came back in.
All right. Hi.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kim.
I had to readjust there, so I apologize for the delay.
Perfectly fine. And a great example of things not going our way and we make it work. So thank you very much. So I'm going to let you go for 30 seconds and go ahead and start your presentation when you'd like to.
Well, I would just like to say that my favorite TV show is A Million Little Things. And that is because the show deals with real life issues, things that people will encounter or go through in this journey that we call life. And so it's really impactful and it's meaningful.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And actually, you wrapped up very nicely on your time with only 4 seconds left, which is ideal. That's always nice when it's right in that perfect little sound bite. And thank you so much to Betsy and Kim and Maurice and everybody who was participating in that, showing how we can just toss it out there. And even if we're maybe not ready and a little nervous, things still come out sounding great. And I'm leaving this with some television show and podcast recommendations, which was not the goal, but hey, works for me. So thank you so much. And again, this is something that you can do with your own small groups. This 30-minute improv exercise I actually got from a junior high English teacher. And this particular English teacher works directly with students who do have to give presentations, book reports, things like that. And she works with them to build speaking confidence. So what she used to do, she had this big hat, you know, like a magician's hat with all these topics in it. And she'd call you up and you pull up a topic and you had to talk for 30 seconds on your topic. And I remember I did it once and I got the topic of clouds. And oh man, you ever want to forget everything you ever knew about clouds in 1 second, be asked to present to a group on that topic. But the point is you make it through, you figure it out, and it's a great way to learn and to practice. I see Maurice says, yeah, you did one of those topics on eggs. Perfect. Yep, whatever you got to say to fill the time. It's a great practice and it's a great way to get comfortable speaking in front of smaller groups without any kind of pressure. Alrighty here. Just a couple things to avoid. We are almost right at time, but we are wrapping up. Couple things to avoid before you present and in general. Try to avoid caffeine on the day you're presenting or before you present. Just because if you don't know how your body is going to react, or if you know that you tend to get that woo 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 coffee Zooms. That might be good, but that on top of anxiety might push you into a state of panic or may give you heart palpitations you're not used to. So avoid caffeine. Again, I shot myself in the foot that one time drinking a Red Bull before a presentation. That might work great for you. I learned it doesn't work for me. Good to avoid caffeine. You also want to avoid dairy. I love dairy, nothing against it. But if you've ever tried to talk to somebody after eating a pile of Halloween candy, you kind of get that chocolate or sugar thing and your voice sounds weird. That's not cute when that happens in front of 300 people. I know it's happened to me and you have to go, okay, anyway. And dairy really makes that happen. It makes I'm trying not to be gross. It thickens your saliva is what happens. And it makes it harder for you to speak clearly, makes you create more mouth noises, makes you need water more often. So save the cheese and crackers for after your presentation. Try to avoid wearing platform shoes or shoes that have a large heel. This is something that goes back to what we talked about with locking our knees. Shoes that have a platform the whole way through, being the 90s kid, I'm thinking of those Spice Girls shoes that were like yay big. I loved those. Those are not good for presenting because they force you to adjust your balance, which makes you lock your knees. So don't play yourself with the platform shoes. And same with heels, things that have a very high heel or one where your toe is down here and the back of your foot is up here, forces you to adjust your balance, forces you to lock your knees. So especially if you're just kind of doing this for the first time, you don't want to give yourself any extra things to worry about. Bust out the flats, bust out the boots with a little heel, anything you can do to not force your knees into that locked position. For me, I almost always wear boots because I want something with a little bit of a heel because I'm 5'2", and I'd like the people in the back of the room to be able to see me. But I also know that anything bigger than that is going to make me lock my knees. And also boots can't fall off. If I'm walking, I'm not going to suddenly walk out of my shoe. So, good thing to keep in mind. Watch out for the shoes you're wearing. Avoid tight clothing if at all possible. Sometimes we can't, especially if we need to be dressed in business attire with things that don't stretch, that are constrictive, especially around our midsection. But when things constrict our breathing, it forces us to take those shallow breaths with the shoulders up here that we don't want to take. It prevents us from extending our diaphragm out to take that deep breath. And ultimately, when you are making adjustments because your clothes are too tight, you can end up hurting yourself, straining your voice, straining your body, any of that. I hurt myself really bad years ago because I had a very tight costume on in a play and I had to do a fake fall while yelling. And I was like, oh, I don't care how tight my costume is. I'm not going to say it to anybody, and ended up pinching a nerve in my hip. I'm fine. It was fine. But the point was that outfit did not need to be the level of tight that it was, and it caused some trouble. So just keep that in mind. And then finally, any questions you have, I am happy to answer them. Like I said, we are at time now, and I want to be respectful of everyone needing to go and do the things they need to do. But if you'd like to ask any questions, please feel free to do so. I can be reached via email at agrabowski@asaoe.org, and also on my LinkedIn. I'm very active on my LinkedIn. I like conversing with people there. So please, if you'd like to connect, that'd be great. And of course, I guess this is the third shameless plug, check out asaoe.org. I have another event next week. We have some fantastic events coming up with our other presenters through December and through January that I'm very much looking forward to. And I hope to see you all there. So thank you so much for coming. And if you have any questions, go ahead and let me know. I see some of you waving. Good to see you guys. Really good to see you. Okay. I'm going to tell a story while people are logging off. If anybody decides they have a question in the meantime, that's fine. My favorite story from working at Hershey. My friend was doing the show that we had to do, which was a 3D show, and it always switched out the main actor. So it was myself or one of my friends talking to a cartoon character. We had just been talking about how this was 2011. The Geico Cavemen were about to get a TV show for all of 2 seconds. And we were talking about that and how silly that was and whatever. So my friend Sean had in his mind the Geico Cavemen. There was one part of the 3D show where we had to jump off the stage and yell, "Mr. Hershey never worked for a circus. He was a caramel maker." It was part of the show. It made sense. Just stick with me. My friend Sean jumps off the stage and yells, "Mr. Hershey never worked for a circus. He was a caveman." And we're all standing there like, what? That's not what? And he realized that he had messed up the line and then just left. And oh my goodness, it was so funny. And we have never let him forget that 11, 12 years later. So again, no matter what, funny things are going to happen. People make mistakes. And Mr. Hershey was not a caveman. All right, looks like we have most of our folks signing out. I'm going to go ahead and end this, I believe. Thank you again for coming. And again, if you'd like to reach out to me individually, please do so. And I look forward to seeing you all at our next event. See ya.